Okay, so now we're back. So I want to close our views, our windows, and let's go to the entry point of the app, the adding game app. And what I'd like to do is import Swift data, and we want sort of like a global database. So first of all, let's just remove this code over here, and also remove this environment variable. But we're going to need to replace this environment variable in some way. So for that, we'll use a model container and use the 4 version. And we want to enter the type. Now we were talking about HighScore entity, and to refer to the actual type, we need .self. That's the first change we're going to make. The first major change. Now, we do want to focus on the central views of this app, which is the HighScoreView. We also had the adding game view, and there was also another view involving rank. But according to the bugs, we'll be able to find the issues in each individual view. So if we build this, this is not going to compile well at all, and it's not expected to. So what I suggest we do now is really move on to the HighScoreView. So the first thing I want to do is really go down to the preview, get rid of this environment variable, and replace it with .model container for HighScore entity .self. And this should be model container. I entered model container for. Okay, great. And now let's go back up to our view, to the very beginning. Now we're going to want access to the high scores in some view model which will no longer exist. So we're going to be getting rid of the view model. And of course, let's not forget we're going to need Swift data here. So import Swift data. Okay, so we imported Swift data up here. And I want to get rid of this environment variable. But then we're going to need some kind of substitute. For what? For the high scores. We need some substitute for the high scores. So that's going to be query private var, and let's just write high scores, and this will be an array of high score entities, which will initially be initialized to the empty array. So I can get rid of this code up here. Now we want to use these high scores. The thing is, they won't necessarily be in order. So one alternative is to create ordered high scores, which is also an array of high score entities. And we can just sort the high scores. So high scores.sort. And actually we can just get rid of this. And $0, well, we want to sort according to score is greater than $1.score. So that will be the rule. So the highest scores will be at the top. So let's focus on using ordered high scores in our list. We have this list down here. And we have HighScoreVM.highScores. So I'm going to replace that carefully with ordered high scores. Now a good thing that we just noticed is that this seems correct. Okay, so we're going to fix things one by one. Next we have onDelete. And like I said, HighScoreVM no longer exists. So we need to replace this with a function called deleteScore. Okay, so our goal now is to create deleteScore. And we're going to put this further down in the code. So how are we going to find the position? Well, let's just go back up here and fold the entire body. And right below that, create a function, deleteScore. And since we're in a list, we're going to need an index set of type index set. And let's run through the set for index and index set. Now we're going to need a model context, which we have not created yet, because otherwise we can't make any changes to our database. So that's something that's missing, right? That's missing. So let's take care of that now. So we need to go back up to this point in the app, right above the body. And let's add a new environment variable. Environment \model context is a variable which we'll call model context. So now we have something to work with. So I can undo this. And in the model context, well, let's see, what are we trying to do? We're trying to delete something. So how about using delete? And what do we want to delete? Well, we want to delete an element, right, from our model. So what we're going to need is to go to HighScores at the index that we just hit. So that's deleteScore. But now we actually want to use this deleteScore function in our code instead of the HighScoreVM. So I unfolded the code, and now instead of HighScoreVM.deleteScore, just deleteScore. So that's already looking a lot better. Okay, great. Let's scroll down. Now we have this RankScoreView. Okay, so this integer, high score entity, color, this should all be fine. Edit mode. Here we are again with HighScoreVM. And like I said, we're going to be removing the HighScoreView model. So let's just comment this out. I'm going to delete this eventually, of course. And now we want, again, we want access to the high scores because we'll need it here. So let's just verify that this is correct. HighScoreVM.update. Okay. So we need to update here, right? That's what we have here. So query private var. We already did this before earlier. High scores is of type high score entity. And we have an environment variable which will give us our model context. Then we can delete, save, insert. Right, so this really gives us, this is the true power. We can actually make changes to our database. Okay. So that's good. And we should have an issue with the HighScoreVM. And we need some way to update. Right, so let's just move this over a little bit. Or actually, let's just get this out of the way. Or yeah, I think this is the, and this needs to just disappear. Not the button. We need to replace this, right, with some kind of update action. So update. And it might be wise to create a separate function for this. For now, I'm not going to do that. So we have our entity, and we want to change the name. That's the meaning of updating in this context. I'll remind you that we are not allowed to change the score. We even set the score to an integer, but we are able to change the name. And what is the new name going to be? Well, this name that is empty and this whole sequence over here. And you'll see that we'll be able to simplify this. So I copied and pasted. And the next thing I want to do is save the changes. So first of all, let's get rid of this annoying code. Now what I'm writing over here would be much nicer if it was in a function of its own. Okay, we can take care of that a little bit later. The next thing I want to do is try to save. Now this might not work. Okay, this might not work. So we need to try to do this. So this should actually be try, and I want to put this in a do catch. So do try model context.save and catch. So if we weren't able to save, then update save failure or error or whatever. Okay. And at this point, at least as far as this view is concerned, we're fairly okay. Now, with core data, we're kind of forced to use optionals, but the way we define things for name was not an optional. So we can correct this. This is the simplification that I was referring to. So fix, we don't need that. And we don't need this nil coalescing either. So it really makes our code much cleaner. Okay, so I think this is enough for this video. I just don't want us to be jumping all over the project, and we're noticing that really to change frameworks, it might be simpler in the end, maybe, arguably, but it does demand some concentration and some work to really go from core data to Swift data, in my opinion. And we see this again, another warning, no point in nil coalescing. And yeah, we can fix this because we know these are not optionals. And just something's bothering me over here. If the name is empty, I actually, what do we want to have? Empty name or a non? Entity name or a non? I guess entity name. Entity name. Okay, it just depends what our requirements are. And let's just clean this up too. Okay. And good, we're good. Okay, so let's take a quick break and then we'll move on to the other views. Because if we try to build at this point, I do not expect it to compile. It shouldn't compile. Okay? But at least this view, HighScoreView, is taken care of. Okay, great. So have an amazing day and see you next time.